She selects wood and works with eagle hands. She is like a merchant ship, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still dawn. She provides food for her family. She and portions for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her camp does not go out at night, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds this staff and grasps the string of her finger. She opens her arms to the poor. She extends her hand to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes covering for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gates, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruct is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idols. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the rewards as she earns, and let her works bring her praise at the city gates.
Judy's going to come now. Judy and Loretta are not going to sing, but Judy's going to come and give us her testimony.
Capt Sara asked me to do my testimony, and I thought, what do I say? And then I said, will you help me? I thought, if I have her help me, she will help me preach on Sundays when I start preaching. So here goes. In 2009, I was in a very abusive relationship, and I was put into a shelter, and I couldn't stay because it was really nerve-wracking about people that was in there. I didn't realize that I was going through the same thing they were going through, or I didn't want to face it. So I was sitting here Salvation Army. I had no clothes, no food. I come up here, and I met with these guys. Sorry. I met with Linda in the office, and she told me, she said, we have a job opening. It's every seasonal. It's bell ringing. I didn't know what bell ringing was. And I said, what do you ring a bell for? And she said, for money. So I signed up, and they come in for the orientation, and I got hired. I was scared to death to stand up there, because I've never done nothing like that. Well, finally I started enjoying it, and I talked to Capt Sara and Captain Curtis, and I decided I wanted to become a soldier. They had me scared to death, Captain Curtis, when I first started. And he says, I yell. So I yell back. And we were just joking around. I knew right then he wasn't as mean as they said he was going to be. But then I started ringing the bell. I met Howard, and Captain Curtis, he kindly reminded us that, you know, you can't date somebody you work for. So we decided just to talk for us that year. And then Howard and I started dating, and I become a soldier, and now we're engaged to be married in January. But I realized that anything I have, any answer or question I have about soldiership or the ministry, I can turn to Capt Sara or Captain Curtis, and they will explain it to me, and hopefully they'll be there every step of the way. And I'm really glad that I started coming here, and I'm planning on being here for years. So I'm glad for them guys. I'm glad they're there with us, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Judy. It is amazing to see how God can work in your life. From something as simple as needing food. You can come and your whole life can be changed. Because God works in amazing ways. This past 2011-2012 program year, the theme for women's ministry has been patterns for living, or pattern for living. And most of the programs and women's retreats circled around pattern of your life and how God has given each of us a pattern. And we've knit that pattern together, and it's what we're to follow. And today we're going to look at a pattern for a woman's life that was laid out in the Bible. But don't tune out, men, because these things can apply to you as well. Henry Estienne, a 16th century Parisian printer and classical scholar, said, "Human life is a conscious thread which each of us spins to his own pattern, rich and complex in meaning. Our lives consist of behavior patterns that we have developed through the years. Consider the man who flew his own plane, but got tired of a long car trip from the airport to his country home, which was situated on a lovely lake. So the idea came to him to equip his plane with pontoons, so he could land right on the water in front of the cottage. However, on his first trip with his newly equipped plane, he headed for a landing at the airport just as he had always done in the past. But as he was going in for a landing, his wife realized what was happening and yelled, "What do you think you're doing? You can't land this thing on the runway. You don't have any wheels, and you've got pontoons on it." Fortunately, her warning shout was in time, and he pulled up from his landing pattern and swung the airplane around and headed the plane for the lake. After the plane landed safely on the lake, he heaved a big sigh of relief and turned to his wife and said, "That's about the stupidest thing I've ever done." Then he turned, opened the door, stepped out, and fell directly into the lake. Old patterns are hard to break. So what exactly is a pattern? Webster's dictionary tells us that it's a noun, and it means a form or model proposed for imitation, or a reliable sample of traits, acts, tendencies, or other observable characteristics of a person, group, or institution, as in a behavior pattern. Dictionary.com defines a pattern as a verb, to imitate, or to attempt to match or duplicate. ArtLex, which is an art dictionary, tells us that the word pattern is the notion of a role model. The pattern presents an idea that is highly worthy of imitation. Indeed, imitation is so essential to pattern that it can be found in every example. There are many activities that use patterns. Sewing is a very obvious one, underhand wallpaper, textiles and materials, models, behavior, flight patterns, schematics used for architecture, construction plans, Morse code, and even recipes. All of these things follow a pattern. A reasonably intelligent person should be able to read a recipe and produce an edible dish that closely resembles the picture in the book. However, there's a story of a young bride and a reasonably intelligent person, so she thought, who tried to make fudge for the first time. The instruction in the recipe indicated to stir the mixture on the stove until it reached the soft ball stage. She kept stirring and waiting for the soft ball to form, only to have the mixture burn. It seems their meaning of softball stage was different from her meaning. In this case, the recipe ended up being a recipe for disaster. We have to understand that the recipe is saying in order to follow it correctly, we have to understand what the recipe is saying in order to follow it correctly. Some people would be totally lost looking at a sewing pattern, me, while others would be lost trying to follow a complicated cooking recipe. We can find many patterns in the Bible. The tabernacle and the temple, which included the structure, the materials, the clothing, and the process. The Lord's Prayer gives a wonderful pattern for our prayers. The Ten Commandments and subsequent laws tell us how to live. And Proverbs 31 tells us how to be a woman of noble character. If you'll open up your Bibles and follow along as I continue. So have you ever met a person who you just love to hate? You hear that sometimes. Most of us would have to confess we've encountered a person or two in our lifetimes that cause us to be insanely jealous because they seem to have everything that we didn't. So when you first look at Proverbs 31, woman, it may cause you to ask, is this lady for real? She cooks, she cleans, she sews, after weaving her own materials even. Her children love her, and she even looks good. Our initial reaction may be to dismiss her as an allegory of all the good things a woman could be, but nobody could ever possibly attain. And yet, even as we try to rationalize her way, other exceptional women come to mind. Susanna Wesley and her incredibly gifted 19 children, Catherine Booth, the Army mother, and there are women also recorded in the Bible. Queen Esther, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Ruth, Mary, and Martha. So if these people could do it, it must be possible, right? One of the tools that the writer of Proverbs 31 used is to help people remember this woman's fine character traits was to write the poem as an acrostic, which is each verse starting with the next letter of the alphabet. But that's the Hebrew alphabet. So since I don't think any of us in here really speak Hebrew, we'll sum up her traits verse by verse with a single word or two from each verse. So starting with verse 10, it says, a wife of noble character who can find, she is worth far more than rubies. So we see in verse 10 that she has substance. Rubies are beautiful, but not fragile. So she is strong enough to stand firm in tough times. She is also priceless. It's hard to find a truly virtuous woman, making her all the more valuable. In verse 11, we see that she is trustworthy. She can be depended on, but is also careful with love and the trust of her family. Verse 12, it says she brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. And that indicates that she is good. The Amplified Bible says she comforts and encourages her husband. Many people tear down their spouse with criticism and harsh words, but a wife of noble character seeks to In verse 13, we see that she is self-disciplined. She's a hard worker who doesn't waste her time. Although she didn't have things like Facebook or cell phone games to distract her, I'm sure there were other things that could have stolen her time. But she chooses to be a good steward of her time. Some suggestions to avoid laziness are to learn time management through books, magazines, and seminars. And it also helps to keep a daily schedule and record how you spend your time. She is also eager to do her work and maintains a positive attitude. Now that one can be very difficult. And in this verse, we also see she is ministry-oriented. Flax, which it says she selects wool and flax and works with her eager hands. Flax was the plant used to make linen, which was used for the priestly garments. So she saw the importance of helping to contribute to the Lord's work. Verse 14, it says she is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. So you could call her enterprising. Her household is as important to her as trade is to merchant ships. She is careful to give her family the best for their meals. She takes much creativity in searching for her to find just the right ingredients. And in 15, where it says she gets up while it is still dark, she provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. So you can see how she is responsible. She understands that other people depend on her, so she rises early to provide for those in her household. She is not selfish. She assigns portions for her servants, meaning that she both provides for them and also gives them their task for each day. She has a plan for her day, starting with rising early. We have many examples in the Bible of people who understood the importance of being an early riser. Abraham, David, Jesus, and the women at the tomb. They're all accounts of these people getting up even before it was light to pray and meditate. You can get a lot done when you get up early. I must admit, I am not an early riser if I can avoid it. It's one thing I'm yet to work on. And in verse 16 it says, she considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings she plants a vineyard. So we see in verse 16 that she is frugal. She is not a shopaholic. She considers her purchases before she buys them. Many of us fall into the addiction of impulse buying and have to suffer with what's called buyer's remorse. There have been countless stories of women, and men for that matter, who just can't stop spending money. But this woman is careful in the use of her money and uses her income to produce more income by spending her earnings to plant a vineyard, which would have been very profitable. She is an example of good stewardship of her resources. In verse 17, she sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. So you see that she is energetic. She is physically fit, with strong arms that work vigorously, suggesting she approaches her work with a healthy attitude. So she's not doing it because she has to do it. She's doing it because she wants to do it, and she knows it's the right thing to do. As a society, we should take steps to improve our physical fitness by eating a healthy diet, maintaining regular exercise, and healthy sleep patterns. I'm sure most of us would admit a downfall in one or many of those areas. Verse 18 says, she sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. So we see from that she is industrious. She takes a moment to reflect on her recent accomplishments. We do well to take time out to review and reflect what we've been able to do. Often the she never went to sleep, remembered that it gets dark long before we usually are ready to go to bed. Verse 19 says, in her hand she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. So you can see that from that verse we can see that she is persistent. She uses her evening time to continue her work for her family. She doesn't spend the entire time watching TV, eating popcorn and ice cream. Did you know that the average American watches more than 4 hours of TV per day? That's a whopping 2 months of every year that we waste watching TV. So Mrs. Proverbs 31 lived in a culture where she probably had a short nap in the heat of the day, so she doesn't need to waste away her evening with meaningless distraction. It is important to take time to relax. It's not what it's saying. But much of our relaxing time can be turned into extended couch potato time if we're not careful. Verse 20 says, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. So we see that she is compassionate. She is concerned for the poor and does something about it. The imagery here is that she doesn't wait for the poor to come to her. She seeks them out. She is fulfilling what the mother figure in the earlier portion of Proverbs is trying to teach her son, where it says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. And that's found in Proverbs 31:8. And as Evangeline Booth said, one of the daughters of William Booth, do the most good for the most people in the most need. So she was compassionate. Verse 21, when it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. So we see that she is prepared. In just about every area of the United States, we've seen the importance of being prepared. From hurricanes, tornadoes, to flooding, to earthquakes, and ice storms, and snowstorms, you see natural disasters can catch anyone by surprise. And in the past few years, we've seen all of that happen with devastating consequences. That being prepared for the unforeseen can make all the difference in the lives of our family members. Perhaps you, in the past or even now, are going through something where you've been blindsided by a devastating disease or tragic accident that threw you into chaos and turmoil. Whether it's a natural disaster or even a personal tragedy, being prepared mentally, spiritually, and physically will help your family to weather the storm. In the book, Let's Roll, which tells the story of a 9/11 hero, Todd Beamer, his wife tells that he was able to act so courageously because he had spent a lifetime of quiet preparation through his obedience to God. We read of the importance of preparation in verses such as Proverbs 6 and 7, where the ant stores its provisions, and in Matthew 25, the parable of the virgins. In the story of Corrie ten Boom, the advanced preparations of this godly family saved the lives of hundreds of Jews from the Nazis. Verse 22 says, she makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. So we see her as elegant. She not only takes care of her household, but she takes care of herself as well. What impression does she give to the visitor who drops by her home and sees her beautifully decorated home as well as her regal appearance? She's a classy lady who presents herself as a worthy individual with strength of character and dignity. Now I know we may not always have time to cook our best and look like June Cleaver when we answer the door, but it is important that we take care of ourselves and know that our bodies are just as important. Verse 23 says, her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She is supportive. She wants the best for her husband and family and is behind the scenes making sure they do well. A godly woman is one who wants the best for others and is not jealous and envious of others' successes. Verse 24 says she makes linen garments and sells them and supplies the merchants with sashes. So she demonstrates creativity. She uses her gifts and talents to not only benefit her family income, but as a practical help to the merchants, sashes were used to help tie up the loose robe so that the person could work unencumbered by the fabric. By providing a creative solution to the merchants, she was also assisting them in their work. And in verse 25, it says she is clothed with strength and dignity and can laugh at the days to come. So we see her strength and her dignity. Not only is she clothed in fine garments, but it's also obvious to everyone that she is clothed in strength and dignity because she knows who she is and whose she is. She also has a sense of humor. She can laugh at the future because she is well prepared. You can read in Proverbs 3:25 and 26, "Have no fear of sudden disaster or the ruin that overtakes the wicked, for the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being snared." We can begin every day confident in the Lord's provision and protection for ourselves and loved ones. Verse 26 says she speaks with wisdom. Our Proverbs 31 woman is not critical, gossipy, or frivolous. In Proverbs 19:13 it says refers to the antithesis of our friend as a constant dripping. Many people can be whining, complaining, ill-tempered, but the godly woman speaks only with wisdom. The Bible has much to say about the consequences of careless words. The more the words, the more the sin. That's from Proverbs 10:9. Proverbs 10:14 says, "The mouth of a fool incites ruin." Proverbs 12:18 says, "Reckless words pierce like a sword." But it also has much to say about the wise use of words. Proverbs 10:11, "The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life." Proverbs 12:18, "The tongue of the wise brings healing." Proverbs 15:1, "A gentle answer turns away wrath." Proverbs 16:24, "Pleasant words bring healing to the bones." We see that she's also a teacher. She gives faithful instruction to her children and all those who come under her influence. In verse 27, we see that she is watchful. She understands that her household is primarily her responsibility and guards it carefully. In today's society, this may include putting filters on our computers, disabling some cable TV stations, monitoring what our children wear and what we wear before we go out the door in the morning. The Proverbs 31 woman could not have seen the types of enemies our households now face. However, if she were here, you'd better believe she would take diligent steps to guard her household. In verse 28, we see that she is honored. While you may hear you're the meanest mom in the world from time to time, there is no reward greater than having your children rise and call you blessed. Her children may not have always appreciated her hard work, discipline, preparation, and instruction, but there comes a point when they realize that an amazing mother and woman she is, and they told her so. Her husband joins in and lets everyone know what a wonderful wife she is. Verse 29 states that she is excellent. We can't help the natural talents that we were or were not given at birth. There may not be a Rembrandt or Mozart inside of us, but we can be excellent in our character. As we have our theme this year, we can strive for excellence. And our character and our devotion to God And in verse 30, we see her as beautiful. Not the kind of beauty that we see on the cover of the magazines. In fact, this verse reminds us that charm is deception and is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting. 2 Corinthians 4:16 tells us that we are outwardly wasting away. This body is not going to be here forever. We're going to get old. We're going to turn gray. All those things are going to happen. But her beauty and ours comes from a life of fearing the Lord, from the inside. Many verses in Proverbs tell us that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and will bring wealth, honor, and life. Our friend certainly discovered this truth in her life. If we're going to be praised for anything, it should be, wow, she really fears the Lord. And finally, in verse 31, she is described as blessed. She didn't become this virtuous woman overnight, but built her character skills, disciplines, and her household day after day. Someone who said, what you are tomorrow, you're becoming today. Each day, we make choices that will affect tomorrow. And the next day, and the year, and your lifetime, one of the strongest principles of this woman's life was discipline. Maintaining discipline in her household, in her shopping habits, in her food preparation, in her spiritual life, in her physical fitness, in her daily chores, in her sleep habits, her free time, her generosity, her compassion, her speech, and her entire lifestyle. The Proverbs 31 woman had developed excellent habits over the years, and they served her well. Dwight L. Moody said, your character is simply a long habit continued. We can see this principle illustrated in the habits of a flea. A flea can jump extremely high, 200 times its length. So it's about 13 inches. So it's really high for something really tiny. So that's how they get from animal to animal. They jump. They can jump. So if a flea is caught and put in a jar without a lid, it's simple for them to escape. They can just jump out. So if a flea trainer, when they catch a flea, they put a lid on the jar and leave it there for 3 days. When the flea jumps, it hits the lid and falls down, over and over. Hits the lid and falls down, just jumping up and down. So after some time, you can see that the flea is jumping just to the lid, but not quite. He jumps and jumps, but not quite hitting the top, but going as high as he can. But what's strange is what happens when the lid comes off. The flea continues to jump almost to where the lid was, but not higher. The flea hit the limit to what he could do. He decided that he could not go any higher and then never tried to improve. Even though the limit was gone, he was stuck in a rut, doing what he always did and not challenging himself. Psychological studies show that it usually takes 6 weeks to make or break a habit. If you find that you can't do something today, don't assume you will never be able to do it. Try it again tomorrow or next week. You may hit the lid occasionally, but you won't be held back by imaginary limits that you can outgrow. We can learn much about godly habits from Proverbs 31 and strive to pattern our lives after this woman's life. The first step in becoming a virtuous man or woman is to open your heart to the one who gives us the pattern for living. Acts 16:31 says, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved, you and your household. Or as the Message puts it, put your entire trust in the Master Jesus. Then you'll live as you were meant to live, and everyone in your household included. So as we close today, that was a lot to think about and take in, but all those words, compassionate, elegant,